truth about Resident Evil 6? Is it as bad as people say? Is it better than what people say? Is it just a game that's simply misunderstood? I don't know, maybe the redheaded stepchild. I know a little bit about being that. Resident Evil 6, I just completed every campaign on it yesterday. So what's today? 8/10. I completed every campaign on it yesterday. All of them are completed. Not in one day. It took a few days, few streams to do it, but they all been completed. And reflecting back on Resident Evil 6 and what it did, what it didn't do, all those things, I would honestly say that the game is a little bit, the hate is somewhat deserved. It is slightly better than what most people say it is, and it is slightly misunderstood. It's all three of those things, honestly. Resident Evil 6 was doing its best attempt to be an action-based Resident Evil game. Now, we've gotten good examples of this. Resident Evil 4 is the best action-based Resident Evil game ever, in my opinion. It's the best one ever. It's not even close. It did the best job of still being Resident Evil, but incorporating enough action where it's like, I'm really enjoying this. I don't have to be as conservative on ammo. I can really enjoy this game. That's my favorite Resident Evil game, by the way. But I think that's the best example of it. I also think Resident Evil 5 was good. Not as good as 4, but good. But the co-op aspect made it much more enjoyable than what people like to say. And on top of the co-op aspect of it, the movements were a little more better than the original Resident Evil 4. The remake Resident Evil 4 had phenomenal movement. Now you go to 6, it's almost like Resident Evil created their games in sets of 3s. So 4, 5, and 6. 6 was complete action. And when people say it's not Resident Evil, I understand it, but you gotta understand this piece. This game came out in 2012, I believe. This was at the height of cinematic style games with dramatic cutscenes and cars flipping and all. Like, you gotta understand it. And this came out when Uncharted was on the top of the top. One of the best games out. So I can see that Resident Evil tried its best to compete with Uncharted, but they did it by almost kind of emulating Uncharted in a lot of ways. Now, despite all the hate it's got, Resident Evil 6 has some pretty dope features. The dopest feature being co-op. Like, some of you guys were born in 2005 and 6, so co-op, couch co-op isn't really like, I love doing it. Like, y'all didn't grow up with that. I'm a 90s kid, right? I was born in the 90s. I grew up in the 2000s, right? I love co-op. It was the best thing. Sitting on the couch with my brother or my friends or whoever I was on the couch with and co-oping and playing. It didn't matter what the game was, right? I believe Call of Duty World at War was co-op. You could do co-op on that one, I believe. Doing that was like the best shit ever, bro. Like, that was fun, right? Or even playing like WWE games and tag teaming with one of your homies, and y'all go against the computers on the highest difficulty. Like, that was a great thing. So the co-op aspect of Resident Evil, phenomenal. The movements of Resident Evil 6 at the time, the movements are pretty good. Now, it does get a little clunky. Some of it does feel a little awkward at times when you try to climb on something and you climb back off. It gets a little weird like that, but that's minor. So I think those are two strengths of Resident Evil 6. Where I think it kind of starts to fall short. The soundtrack is horrible. I don't even remember a soundtrack. It's dirty. I don't even remember a soundtrack. And the storytelling, right? The storytelling was like, the most solid story in the entire game was probably Chris's story. I think that was a really solid campaign, really solid story. Everything made sense, very cohesive. He's pretty much a soldier with PTSD that feels guilty, who's dealing with survivor's remorse. And if you guys haven't played, I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but his campaign follows that very, very well. The other campaigns, Jake had a good campaign. Leon's campaign felt the most like Resident Evil. Like, it felt the most like Resident Evil. Ada's campaign was cool. It filled in some blank spots. I think the attempt at what they were trying to do was great. I just don't think they were great at doing it. That's all. I just don't think they were great at doing it. You got 4 separate stories, and they are intertwined and connected. What I think Resident Evil could have done to make it more cohesive was shorten the stories up. Maybe take an hour off of each campaign, make the stories, I don't know, make them intertwine a little bit better. Maybe you could even, I don't know, play a game where you start off the story, you start your campaign, you start off with playing as Leon, and then you shift over to another one to connect each of the stories in that way. Maybe you could do it that way, I don't know. But I think that the hate for this game is warranted because a lot of people were expecting Resident Evil, right? Resident Evil, even when you were an action-based game, RE5, RE4, even when you were that, you were still Resident Evil. There was still lore. You walked around, you found documents, you could read documents. Oh, this is pretty cool. This talks about events in Raccoon City in RE2 or RE3. Like, you still had those things, right? And I think Resident Evil tried to compete with all of the dramatic cutscenes and all of that. They got so far away from their core. You can still have some of that, but you got to keep some of the core there because that is your audience. Imagine if your favorite artist, doesn't matter who they are. You know what? Imagine if Pusha T drops an album. He don't make no drug references at all. No, nothing. Matter of fact, and the whole album, he's talking about love. You would be like, what is this? Not to say Pusha T don't fall in love. Not to say he's not a good enough artist to talk about something like that. But there's an expectation for him. Now, he can talk about that, but you would want to hear him say, if he's going to talk about love, talk about how he struggled with love and how he struggled with being a hustler on the side and how the two got intertwined. There's ways to do it, is my point. That's my whole point of it, right? You can make a story about who's Jason Statham, right? You can do anything you want with Jason Statham. Just let there be action in the movie. Most of us do not want a Jason Statham movie. We don't want that movie from him if there's no action. You can make it a love story, a sad story, a cop story. Just keep it Jason Statham. And I think that's what Resident Evil got away from. Yes, you have Resident Evil characters. Yes, you got some Resident Evil lore that is implied, right? You got a lot of lore that is implied, but it doesn't feel like Resident Evil. They got away from their core. So when you get away from your core fan base is going to rebel, reject, and be upset. That's what that was. But if you took Resident Evil as just a standalone game and you called it something else like Outbreak and Orange City, that game would not receive nearly the hate. Wouldn't receive the hate not nearly. Because there's some cool stuff. The mercenary mode, that's a fun mode. A lot of people enjoyed it. There's some great things about RE6. And we can't let the great things just be overshadowed by the fact that at its core, it don't feel like Resident Evil. That's all I'm saying. Am I saying that it's a great game? Absolutely not. Even if you take the Resident Evil title out of it and just make it its completely own separate thing, it's still a game with flaws. Don't get it effed up. It's still that. But it's not nearly as bad as we made it seem. Somebody made a comment like, Resident Evil 6 gets hate like Arby's. I'm here to disagree. Arby's is terrible. Resident Evil 6 is not. End of that. So, with that being said, do I think you should play it? I do. If you like Resident Evil, you should give it a shot. If you haven't played it yet, give it a shot. I'm sure you're going to find things to enjoy about it. You are, right? And for me, my favorite aspect of it is co-op. I don't think it's a game that's truly meant to be enjoyed solo. Number one, the AI is terrible. You're going to get beat. You will get shot, stabbed, all of that. And your partner will be sitting there just looking at the wall. This happened to me several times. Several times. I'm fighting for my life. And I'm like, Helena or whoever I'm playing it with, and they're like not helping me, right? So sometimes they're helpful, but it's really fun to play with a teammate, man. So that's what makes Resident Evil 6, that's the best part about it. Now, do I think there should be a remake? People have asked me. I don't think they should do a remake, right? Because a remake typically stays very true to what the original was. You just kind of you kind of like just improve the graphics, mechanics, and all of that. I think there should be a reboot, right? And a reboot keeps it as, co-op and all of that, but you gotta change some things up. Add some lore in there. Add some different things in there, right? Put some things in there. Most remakes are just remakes. You just touched it up a little bit, came back, fixed it up, blah, blah, blah. But a reboot, you damn near, I'm not saying you're gonna wipe out everything, but there's some things that gotta go. Some things have to go. Like we don't need some of the stuff that's in there. Fix up the soundtrack, that's great. I'm not an advocate for puzzles, but there was almost no puzzles in there. I actually hate puzzles, but puzzles are part of Resident Evil. They didn't exist. Okay, I keep going back to this because I love it. The lore doesn't exist, right? I think these are there are some small adjustments that you can make with RE6. In my opinion, RE6 is like a 6 out of 10. There's small adjustments you can make that turn that 6 into an 8. So if they ever do a remake of it, I prefer a reboot, and I think they should add a couple of little things in there, take some things out, shorten up each campaign. You don't need 6-hour campaigns for 4 campaigns, right? Because what you could have did, if you're gonna make it a 6-hour campaign, what you should have did is make each of them 8 and give them their own separate games. So that way the game is focused purely on that, right? Like, because 6, it almost feels like to some degree, you kind of stretching it a little bit. I'll give you an example. In Leon's campaign, you fight the same boss 4 times. We don't need that at all. Like, we don't even need that a little bit. Like, we don't need that at all. You fought the same boss 4 times. That was extended, bro. We could have fought him twice and been good with that. I'd have been good with that. Yeah, fought him twice, been good with it. But we fought the same boss like 3 or 4 times. Another thing Resident Evil 6 did really well was that it did enough for us to want to go back to that gritty horror that we get from the original Resident Evil games. Now, granted, the original Resident Evil games are not in first-person shooters, but the theme of horror, we got that with Resident Evil 7. And we would not have truly appreciated it without Resident Evil 6 and 5. 5 isn't terrible, 6 get a lot of hate, but because they were so action-based and we went back to true horror, like you're getting like an average day Ethan Winter, shout out to him, you're getting like an average guy coming to try to find his wife, that was a great thing. And I do agree with the developers and a lot of other people. You can't really make slow horror with Leon or Chris or even Jake. You really can't. Like, you just can't, because they're too physically capable to make them, they're not going to be scary. They're too physically capable, right? They're too physically capable. They're too, like, that's what they do. Like in Resident Evil 8, when you play as Chris, you start running through stuff. Like, because you're not, it doesn't make sense. But all in all, I think Resident Evil 6 gets a lot of unnecessary hate. Is it a great Resident Evil game? No. Is it a great game? No. Is it a fun game? Yes. It's a fun game. It's a solid game. There's so many games worse than that one. Resident Evil 6 did his job in the action department, has some fun stuff. You get the counter moves, you get the DDT enemies, you get to drop kick them, and Jake at the end of his campaign, you get the box of BOW. Like, it's a lot of stuff that they did well, and we tend to overlook that. So if I'm you and I haven't played it, go play that game with a clear mind and enjoy yourself. Play it with a friend though. And you can connect online, you ain't gotta be on the couch, but go play with a friend. I guarantee you'll find some enjoyment in the game. You will. Appreciate all you guys for listening. I'm out.